Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with my full review of the Apos Ray 6SN7 Select vacuum tubes. And I want to apologize, my videos have been coming out kind of slow lately, but I own a small lawn care business and it's been a really wet summer so far, the wettest in 14 years, and just been working so much I haven't had much time to work on videos. It takes a lot of time, a lot of hours to put together my notes and set up to do a video. And once again, sorry they're coming out kind of slow, but it looks like we're heading into a dry period, so maybe I'll get a few videos out in the next few weeks. So anyway, these were sent to me for review by Apos Audio. They currently sell for $64.99 for, and this is in US dollars, that's for one tube, or a matched pair for $149.99, or a matched set of 4 for $329.99. And I realize with most things you get a lower price when you go with, buy in bulk, buy 2 or 4, but that's not the way it works with tubes because they have to be carefully matched into matching pairs or matching sets of 4, so that actually raises the price instead of reducing it. So anyway, the name Select on the Apos tubes means that these were selected from the top 5% of the batch. These are 6SN7 tubes with 8 pins. They have ceramic collars, or what you would call the base. They're gold-plated pins, and the logo on them is silkscreen. One of the best parts about this is these are, they're not NOS tubes, and if you're new to tubes, NOS means new old stock, which means they're basically new tubes that have never been used, but NOS tubes could be 50, 60, 70 years old. They might have been manufactured all the way back in the 50s and have sat in a warehouse ever since and were never used. So when you buy an NOS tube, you don't know how old it is, and they're probably not tested, and there's probably not going to be a warranty. So the difference is with these are brand new, just manufactured tubes, and they do have a 12-month warranty. And they're built. My understanding is there's only a few factories out there that are actually building tubes these days, and a lot of the different companies are using these same factories, and I don't actually know where or who builds these tubes for Apos, but they are built to very strict specifications that are given by Apos. So these are unique because of that. And Apos, gave them the specifications, said match these specifications for our tubes. So besides from a 12-month warranty, Apos also provides free shipping, free priority shipping actually, and a 45-day return policy. So you're probably not going to find that. I don't know if you'll find that anywhere else where you can, return things for 45 days like you can with Apos. I did want to mention there will be an affiliate link below in the notes below this video. And if you click on that affiliate link, you will be helping this channel because this channel will get a 10% affiliate sort of a commission, and that will go to help this channel. That money doesn't go in my pocket. If when I get affiliate fees like that, it does go to this channel to help with buying equipment, to pay for shipping, things like that. Things like audio racks to hold up equipment, because I get a lot of equipment accumulated at one time. And even this camera that I bought, it's been probably a month and a half ago now, and went to 4K using a GoPro 12 camera, and that money came from, the money this channel gets from YouTube, which isn't a whole lot, and the occasional affiliate fees. So if you can, click on that link if you're interested in buying these tubes, and it won't cost you any more. Apos just kicks back 10% to this channel. So did want to give you a closer look here. They come in a very nice sturdy box, and when you open it up, you'll see it comes with very thick, very high quality foam around the tubes. And I'll try to give you a close-up look at these. And they do have the ceramic base. It's a standard 8 pins, but they are gold plated. And the logo, the Apos logo, is on this side, which is in silk screen, and then also the Ray Select logo on this side. So before I get into my description of the sound of these, I did want to mention the equipment I used in reviewing these. And first of all, my clean power was provided by Core Power Technologies. And you can see that right here. That filters out all the grunge and everything out of the AC. And my amp that I used to review these, I only have one amp that uses this tube right now. I actually have several tube amps around. I've got about 5 or 6 of them right now. You can see a few in the background. But the one that uses these is the Feliks Audio Elise that is sitting right here. And this is a very nice amp. It's I've been doing reviews about 6 years now, and this is one of my favorite amps that I've reviewed. It does sell for about $2,000, and the tubes that come in it are PS Vane. And I think I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not sure. I wasn't sure on my first video. And to be honest, this is only my second video I've done as far as tubes. I've reviewed several tube amps, but I haven't actually done reviews of tubes before this, and my first impressions before this video. So anyway, back to the equipment. I'm using as my source an SMSL PL200 CD player, and I'm using that, the digital output, and running into a Hi-Fi Man Serenade, and which is a combination amp DAC, and I'm using the R2 DAC, which is a Hi-Fi Man Himalaya Pro R2R DAC that's built into that, and then running the analog output of that into the Feliks Audio Elise. And then as far as headphones I've used doing this review, most of it has been with the ZMF Atrium, which is a 300 ohm dynamic driver headphone that just matches so well with this amp. Just an exceptional synergy between the two. But also I use the JM Audio XTC2 open back and the LSA HP2 closed back dynamic driver. And then I actually used a couple of planar magnetic headphones for this review. And you're probably, if you saw my review of the Feliks Audio, the Elise, I don't really recommend that amp for planar magnetic headphones. Even the easier to drive, it just, the mid-range sounds beautiful. Like if you take something like the Hi-Fi Man Aria Organic and hook it up to this, the mid-range is just beautiful, but I believe that most OTL amps are that way. They just don't put out enough current to drive planar magnetics, and the bass ends up a little bit flat and lacks dynamics and punch. So that's why I don't recommend it. But when during this tube exchange back and forth, I did decide to try it to see if the tubes made a difference. So I also threw in the Hi-Fi Man Aria Organic and the Kennerton Odin, which is another, actually an even easier to drive planar magnetic headphone that's easier to drive even than the Hi-Fi Man. So I did want to mention before I got into this that there's probably the ideal way to compare tubes would be to have your tubes in 2 identical amps using the same source into both amps, and then just switching back and forth. I mean, ideal would be 2 identical headphones also, and just have to switch headphones and be able to immediately go back and forth. Well, I don't have two identical amps or two identical headphones. So what would be almost just as good would be to have the two identical amps with tubes in both of those and be able to just switch the headphone back and forth, but unfortunately I can't do that either. So I've been struggling on how to properly review tubes, and I've heard other reviewers mention this problem also, that when you use one amp excuse me, to compare tubes, you basically have a 15-20 minute time frame between listening to one to the other, and that's a long time to try to remember the sound, little details of the sound. And some people say our sound memory is only like 10 seconds. So what you have to do is you have one set of tubes in, you're done listening, you turn the amp off. Now you've got to wait like 10 minutes for the tubes to cool off enough to remove them. Then you have to switch the tubes over. Then you've got to turn them back on and wait like 5 minutes for the new tubes to warm up. So you've got at least 15, if not 20 minutes in between listening to the tube. So I was struggling to hear differences between tubes because of that big gap in time. Excuse me just a second. And it is a little warm in here because I had to turn off the AC. It was just too noisy. So forgive me if I appear a little hot and a little sweaty in this video. So anyway, so what I figured out a better way to compare the tubes. And I don't have two identical amps, but what I did is this amp right here. This is a Waveborn tube amp, and this actually happens to be a transformer coupled. So the sound is slightly different, but that's not really important. It does sound similar though. These two amps do have a similar sound. So what I did is I hooked up both of these amps to the same source, and I'm using this one, the Waveborn, as kind of a comparison. So I put one set of tubes in, which would be the PS main that came with this, and compare the sound to this amp. And try to notice little differences between the two. Then switch the tubes and go back and compare it with the Apos tubes to this amp, and using this as a reference where I can jump back and forth real fast. And it made it a lot easier doing it that way for me to hear small differences. Like I could compare the bass between the two of these with one set of tubes, then compare the bass between the two with another set of tubes. And, sound stage and all other aspects of the tubes. And it made it a lot easier for me. So hopefully reviewing tubes in the future, I can do it that way, because I probably never will have two identical amps, but that did help me out a lot. So, like I mentioned, the only other tube I had to compare these to are the PS main. And the ones that come in the Feliks Audio Elise sell for about $129 a pair. They're slightly lower in price than these, but I'm guessing the Feliks Audio, and that is not a cheap amp. I don't know if I mentioned it. That's a $2,000 amp. So Feliks Audio did not throw budget tubes in this amp. I'm sure Feliks Audio went through a lot of tubes and compared them and came up with what gave this amp the best sound. So I'm sure the PS main were chosen over a lot of other brands, and I'm sure they work very well with this amp. So that's going to be a pretty tough comparison for these Apos tubes. But I did hear differences, and like I said, using another amp as sort of a reference to compare back and forth did help me. So basically, both sets of tubes, the PS main and the Apos Ray tubes, they're both excellent tubes. They both have excellent detail, very clean sound, and both have a warm, rich tube sound. But I did notice some slight differences. So, also, they both have very quiet background noise, very low hiss, and both both of these, even if I hook up a very sensitive headphone, like say the Grotto SR80E, a little 32 ohm dynamic driver headphone that takes very little power. Okay, even with that, okay, my volume, the listening level would be probably about 9 o'clock. Okay, that would be my normal listening, if even that. Okay, well, if I pause my source, there's absolutely no hiss with either of these tubes at that volume. I'd have to go up to like 11, even 12 o'clock to begin to hear hiss. And that's a much higher volume level than I'm going to use doing any listening. So even with very sensitive headphones, I'm hearing absolutely no background hiss with either of these tubes. Okay, the tone balance between the two is actually very similar, but I did notice a difference. Okay, with the ZMF Atrium, the Apos tubes gave a little bit more weight to the bass. Not a big difference, but slightly more weight to the bass, a little bit more punch to the bass. Okay, that was with the Atrium, but and this is the reason I threw in the planar magnetic headphones, because the Aria Organic, it sounds beautiful on this amp, but like I said, it loses a little bit of its bass weight and a little impact. Well, when using the Apos tubes, it loses less, like compared to a solid state amp, or compared to this amp with, this is a transformer coupled amp, and this amp does a lot better with planar magnetic headphones. But anyway, that's just the way it works. OTL amps usually don't do well with planar magnetics, but what I noticed with this amp, the Feliks Audio Elise, using the Apos Ray tubes, it does a better job, a noticeably better job with easy to drive planar magnetics. I can almost recommend this amp now for something like the Aria Organic, or maybe like the Ananda Nano, or some of the easier to drive planar magnetic headphones that actually did have significantly more weight to the bass using that type of headphone than the PS Vane. Okay, getting into the detail and the resolution, the clarity, I would say that even though the PS Vane is very good, I would say that the Apos Ray does have just a slightly cleaner mid-range, slightly more detail in the mid-range. It's not quite as warm. The PS Vane is a little slightly warmer, slightly richer, and but the Apos does have just a little bit more detail, a little bit cleaner, more focused sound in the mid-range. The soundstage. There's a little bit of a difference. The PS Vane has a very wide soundstage, and this amp, especially matched up with the ZMF Atrium, just has a huge three-dimensional soundstage. That's why I like that combination so well. Okay, the Apos has a little bit more width to the soundstage. Not a huge difference, but it does have a little bit more width than the PS Vane. But the PS Vane, to me, sounds like it has slightly more depth, a little bit more of a three-dimensional, a little bit more of a holographic sound than these. So you get a little extra width with this, but you get a little bit of extra depth with the PS Vane. So basically, there's not a huge difference. They're both very good tubes, and like I said, I'm sure that Feliks Audio picked the PS Vane as the best tube they thought for that amp. So I wouldn't really say this is a huge upgrade. It's just a little bit different. With the PS Vane, you're going to get a slightly warmer, slightly richer sound with a little bit more depth, where with the Apos, you're going to get a little bit more soundstage width and just a little bit more clarity and detail, a little bit sharper focus sound. So not a huge difference between the two, but A little bit of a difference, and the biggest difference though is if you're trying to run a planar magnetic headphone, even an easier to drive planar magnetic headphone, and the Aria Organic was the one I used, it does definitely, without a doubt, have a little bit more weight to the bass and a little more bass impact with the Apos. So if you're running a planar magnetic, then yes, I would consider this an upgrade for this particular amp. I can't say if it's going to be the same with other amps. I don't know. In the future, if I get another amp in that uses this type of tube, I'll try to, compare further, or if I get some other tubes in from other brands. But basically, this tube works very well with the Feliks Audio Elise, and I think, like I said, I wouldn't really say it's an upgrade to PS Fade. It's kind of a sideways where you're going to gain some things and lose others, but it's going to be small changes. There's not a big difference, but really, I don't think you could go wrong with this. If you've got a Feliks Audio amp, I think, you'd probably be very happy with these tubes, and everything about them says quality, and then that 12-month warranty, which I'm sure you're not going to get with NOS tubes, and a 45-day return policy through Apos. I assume that applies to tubes. I think that's a store-wide thing. If I'm wrong, I apologize. If Apos has an exception for tubes, I'm not aware of it. So anyway, but that pretty much wraps it up. A very good tube, a very nice sound, and yeah, I can definitely recommend these. So once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please join, if you haven't already joined or subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. And if you haven't already joined the Headphone Experience on Facebook, it's up to 32.7, I think, yeah, 32.7 thousand members, continues to grow. So once again, thanks for watching my video.